All right. Hello, friends. Welcome to Goal Friday. I um, was rewriting things right up until a couple minutes ago because I couldn't stop myself. Welcome to a live about overthinking when I am literally the poster child. So, hello, all. If you are here, I'm going to guess that you're one of the more than half of people who self identify as a chronic overthinker. And you are not alone, obviously. But before we get too deep into that, I'm going to introduce myself. And hi, I'm Sarah Lobkovich. I'm a board certified health and wellness coach focused on career well being and impact. And a huge part of my expertise is in goal setting. That's why we call these Fridays Goal Fridays. But I'm also really focused on facilitating behavior change for goal attainment because what good do our goals do if we don't actually change our behavior to attain them? I've trained over 2,000 objectives and key results coaches, including I see Jessica is here. So a new OKR coach to welcome to the fold. I've also led OKR. And when I say OKR, that's objectives and key results. It's a form of goal setting. I've led OKR adoption in multi-thousand person organizations in Fortune 100 and 500 companies you would know, as well as with purpose-driven solos and small businesses too. So today we're going to dive into one of my favorite topics because it is very closely held to me. We're going to talk about what overthinking is, where it comes from, and how to notice when you're doing it. And then I'm going to share an exercise with you that I usually use in the context of goal setting, but we're going to practice it today as a tool for helping when we find ourselves in overthinking. It's an important technique for shifting from overthinking into the insight part of our brain. That was why I was a little behind is I was reading neuroscience this morning, totally unrelated, just for fun, and came across something that just had to be a part of our conversation today. And it's about that insight part of our brain. So we're going to work on the exercise so that you can quickly set clear, inspired goals and make meaningful progress toward your aspirations. But you can also use this exercise when you're facing an issue that's putting you in that state of overthinking. So we're going to use this to gather data and information that helps us learn and grow without getting stuck in those cycles of overanalysis that might be so familiar. And now I was going to go into a big psychological and academic overview of overthinking, but who are we kidding? You RSVP'd and joined this event, so I don't have to explain it to you. But I do want to let some friends help us out with that part. So let me get my screen shared here. Last night I posed a couple questions about overthinking to my social followers, and the responses were just absolutely incredible, absolutely brilliant. So we're going to go into my trusty friend Miro here. And the questions I posed were, what does overthinking feel like? How does overthinking impact you? And then some questions about if I could reduce or manage overthinking, it would free me up to, or I know I'm overthinking when, or I know I'm thinking productively and not overthinking when. So those were the questions that I posed. And I think some of this is going to sound familiar to you. In fact, drop in the chat window which of these you notice in yourself when you're overthinking. Repeating something over and over. That one I should have made the sticky note even bigger. That's where the psychological and academic kind of definition of overthinking really starts, is that rumination. It's our looping thoughts where we feel stuck in our thinking, or where our thoughts are looping, we're not making progress. Kevin, this is risky. I don't know for sure that I have permission to use his DMs, but his DMs were absolutely brilliant. So I'll just stick to what he said in public, that in classic overthinker fashion, his replies in total exceeded the character count. That is that over explaining element of overthinking. In addition to overthinking, we can have a tendency to then think so much that when we try and communicate with others, we over explain. My friend Ben, the author of How to Not Suck as a Manager and another upcoming awesome book, How Not to Suck as a Manager, is on my most recommended list. It's actually on my book list on my website. And he brought up the insomnia, being up at 2 a.m. thinking about scenarios, from everything from the important to the unimportant. And that's another of those elements. Is it can affect our sleep, can affect our bodies. Sarah said, if I can just think of enough detail in the right order, I can sort it out, but I'm never done. I think that speaks to the feeling of being overwhelmed that we can have, but it's also, she said, I feel like if I can just think of enough detail in the right order, when I feel the need to organize everything in sight, I'm overthinking. That is manifesting the part of overthinking that is our natural human inclination to overfocus on control and what we can control, and try and bring ourselves a sense of psychological organization by trying to control what we can. Nyla is a writer of I Love My Writers, and she said, overthinking feels like safety, but also floating away on a raft, which I just thought was brilliant. It's it feels like safety again because it's something we feel like we are controlling. It's a way that our brain is trying to manifest some control for us. And then some of the anonymous comments were, overthinking feels like being stuck on a crowded subway, or it keeps me stuck in the lab, constantly analyzing and scrutinizing from the sidelines, but never making it out to the field. That speaks to this cluster of rumination, lack of progress, looping. Sarah's comment spoke to mental load and that cognitive overhead. You can almost feel the anxiety in people's answers. And then another anonymous submission was, if I could reduce or manage my overthinking, I could breathe, which was so brilliant because we're going to actually talk today some about the somatic and kinesthetic elements of this. So the body-based elements of overthinking. Overthinking and remedies to overthinking aren't just in our heads, they're also in our bodies. So I see a couple comments there in the chat about over focus on control and over explaining. Yeah, especially Jamar does a lot of education, and that's something a lot of us who have a teaching orientation find ourselves in that prong for sure. Over preparation too. So I drew this picture it was a couple weekends ago, and I'm going to share it here because this is what we're fighting against. I've been in business since 2021. I have a tendency toward rule following. So when I hear a rule, I adopt it as a truth, unless it has to do with unearned power, privilege, or authority. And those I just reject outright. But when I hear a rule like, don't start paid advertising for your business until what you're doing is working organically. I hear that. And so I think, well, not everything in my business is perfect. So I'm not going to start paid advertising because that's the rule. And a couple weeks ago, I had an idea. I had this thought, and I was like, the longer I don't do any search advertising, the longer I'm going without learning from the data of search advertising. So I put up a $5 ad spend, and in a weekend, I learned more about what people are searching for around goal setting than I have in 3 years. And so I drew this picture so that I never forget this lesson again. This is a note to self, but I'm going to share it with you because it's relevant here. When we have this tendency towards overthinking, we spend a long time in thinking. We spend way too much time in thinking. And then at some point, we decide to take action and we start doing. And then we'll talk about overdoing next week. But because we've overthought, then our tendency might also be to overdo. And then it delays the point at which we start getting information or data even further. So it delays the point where we start learning. So then, after this long period of thinking and this maybe too long period of doing, we finally get some information. We finally get to start learning. And then we can get into optimization. Our curiosity kicks in. And curiosity, if you've been here before, is one of the antidotes to anxiety. And anxiety is an element of overthinking. So, this is what a lot of us do as overthinkers. We spend a long time thinking, we might spend a little too long doing, a little too much effort doing, and then we finally get some information. We start learning and optimizing. Our curiosity kicks in, and we're off to the races from there. And we wonder, why didn't I start this 3 years ago? Why didn't I start this a long time ago? Where if we throw that out the window and we work on making our thinking phase the right size. We're going to work on some awareness and potential exercises for this today. But we want to make our thinking window high quality, but we want to make our thinking window short because the sooner we get into doing, the sooner we get some information that we can learn based on. Our curiosity kicks in. So look at the red lines here, show the difference in the time we spend in anxiety. We spend way less time in anxiety if we accelerate our thinking and doing to get into learning and optimizing, and we expand the amount of time we get to spend in curious exploration compared to when we're in that overthinking state. So, with that, let's do just a couple little review points on our psychological definition of overthinking. And I'm going to push the right button so I don't leave the live stream. There we go. Awesome. So we've already kind of talked about this. From a psychological standpoint, overthinking is often defined as that repetitive, unproductive thought. It involves that dwelling on our thoughts, the analyzing situations beyond what they actually merit, and often catastrophizing or imagining the worst case scenarios. But beyond that psychological definition, what we just talked about when we looked at that picture is analysis paralysis. We're overanalyzing a situation to the point where taking action might feel impossible. One of our folks who chimed in talked about that, always being in the lab, never making it onto the field. And I have an example of this recently that is really close to home. When I was preparing for my NBC HWC exam, my health and well-being coach exam, which was a multiple choice, best choice test. So every question had multiple right answers, and you have to choose the best of the right answers. And I swear I could talk myself into any of the answers being right. Picking the best one felt almost impossible, and that was my overthinking brain at work. So, overthinking and analysis paralysis are your brain taking a simple math problem and turning it into calculus on a matrix of potential outcomes, risks, uncertainties. It can leave you feeling overwhelmed and unable to make decisions or move forward. And then we do this for a whole lot of reasons. Sometimes we're struggling to coexist and make sense of uncertainty. Our human brains don't love uncertainty or ambiguity. Sometimes it's that kind of game. I learned so much from TJ Matten, a play expert and trauma therapist who was on the Thinky Doers podcast the last couple weeks. And some of us just have this top-down play style where our brains might invent a choose your own adventure fractal, trying to predict all possible outcomes for a scenario and prepare for everyone. I have that type of brain. Sometimes we might struggle with confidence or perfectionism, and overthinking is an adaptation that we use to try to work through and cope with our self-doubt, our imposter feelings, or issues that we might have with feeling good enough. And so past negative experiences, conditioning, our own high expectations, our cognitive wiring, those of us who are neurodivergent or experience rejection sensitive dysphoria, all of these things can contribute to overthinking. The list is very long. And I just mentioned TJ. TJ is a play expert. If you haven't already listened to the last couple Thinky Doers episodes, there are 2 in a row about play and the science of play, and then play as a mindfulness practice, especially for those of us who might have issues with the sit still, be quiet kind of mindfulness. And she said something that blew my mind. She said that anxiety can be a symptom of a storytelling brain that's deprived of its play. So think about that for a minute. Maybe you have a brain that's wired for storytelling. So just like a really smart Australian Shepherd or other really smart dog who, if they don't have a job, they're going to get into trouble. That's what your brain is doing when you're overthinking. So today we're going to work together to build a new toolkit for overthinking and analysis paralysis. And first, we're going to look at ways to notice when you're stuck in analysis paralysis, since we have to notice when it's happening to be able to do anything about it. Then I mentioned that exercise I'm going to share with you that I usually use with coaching clients when they're setting goals, especially in the form of strategic goals as no BS objectives and key results. And ironically, I call that the big think, but that doesn't mean the big overthink. So we're going to practice thinking with our insight brain muscles, which might sometimes mean thinking with our bodies, not just in the deep parts of our head. And this is where I had a little insight when I was reading this morning that we'll get to in just a minute here. But first, let's talk about that feeling in our body. One of the signs that I watch for and look for when I know I'm overthinking is the difference between the feeling of when you are brow furrowed, it's so stereotypical to say, but when we're thinking very hard and our brow is furrowed and you might feel your jaw clenched, and do that with me for just a minute. So furrow your brow, clench your jaw, go into that mode where you're thinking really, really hard. That's not what we're going to do today. We're going to practice not doing that. So instead, I want you to let that all go, shake it out, loosen up your face, unclench your jaw. And I want you to just, maybe I hate it when people say smile, but give yourself a little bit of a neutral expression or a little bit of a smile. Take a deep breath and let's relax. And that feeling, the feeling of not having your brow furrowed, that's the feeling that we're going to have while we work on this exercise. If you find yourself going into that jaw clenched, forehead furrowed kind of vibe, take a deep breath, shake it out, maybe wiggle, get up and down, take a walk around your desk, whatever you need to do. We want to stay in that relaxed mindset space. And then this morning, I was just drinking my coffee and reading a book about neuroscience because that's just how I am. And the study that I read about this morning was where they put 2 groups of people into an fMRI machine, soccer players and actors. The study took place in LA, so of course it was actors. And then the researchers asked them a series of questions. They asked neutral questions, they asked questions about soccer, and they asked questions about acting. And what they found in the study was that when soccer players were asked about soccer, different parts of their brain lit up than when they were asked about acting or when they were asked about neutral questions. Same thing, actors, different parts of their brain lit up when they were asked about acting or something they were intimately familiar with. And this book identifies that as um, intuition. So the part of our brain that lights up when we're talking about something or or reflecting on something that we're really intimately familiar with, that's our intuition or our intuitive part of our brain. And that's the part I want you to play with today. The other parts of our brain that light up that take effort, think about how easy it is. I'm looking at folks who are on the call, like Jessica is an EOS expert and Jamar is an expert in marketing strategy and YouTube. So I want you all, LB is a pro at connecting and amplification. She's amazing. So when I think about the strengths that you all have, I want you to think about for a minute how easy it is for you to talk about what you're best at. If you're anything like me, you might not, it's like when I finish one of these lives, I don't even remember what I said. It's so natural. This is just so much a part of me. It's like breathing. And I want you to think about doing something like that in your life. So, what is it that to you is as easy as breathing? What does it feel like when you think and talk about that? Jamar says it feels so natural. So, that's where we're going to try and brain our brains to today. We aren't going to let our brains go into the places where we're soccer players trying to answer questions about acting. We're going to stay in what we're really intuitively close to. And just the little bit, if anyone wants to really nerd out, when a participant in the study made a judgment regarding the subject she knew the most about, so when our soccer players were reflecting on soccer, where little conscious effort was required, that activates a network of brain centers that include the amygdala, which is the sentinel of emotion, and the basal ganglia, the home of habit. So emotion and habit, those are familiarity. That's the piece of the brain that we're going to play with today. And in contrast, when we ask our soccer players about acting, then they draw on their conscious brain, on their ability to remember explicit evidence-based learning. So later in the goal setting process, let's see, I'm seeing the stream might be frozen. Hopefully it comes back here. So what we're going to play with, we're not going to get into that evidence-based learning, the evidence-based part of our brain. We're going to do that later in our goal setting practice. But today, when we're just trying to unstick ourselves, we're going to stay in that new brain, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the part that is about what we are most intuitively aware of and connected to. So thank you for letting me nerd out. That's from The Well-Tuned Brain, Neuroscience and the Life Well Lived by Peter C. Wybrow, which I haven't finished, but I will put it on my book list on my website since I talked about it today. All right, so now we have two tools to identify when we notice when we're overthinking. We're going to watch our physical sensations. Are we getting tense? Is our brow furrowing? Is our jaw clenching? And we're also going to watch, are we in effortless thinking that's just flowing and coming naturally? Or have we found ourselves into effortful thinking? And if we're in that effortful conscious thinking, then that's what we want to pull ourselves out of. All right, so now let's get into the exercise. And I'm going to remind us first what the productive thinking style that we're aiming for is. We're aiming for that clear and focused kind of thinking, not hyper focused. We want to be in that flow state where we feel generative, creative. It might even be somatic or embodied or kinetic. Like I am a paper person. I like sticky notes on the wall and whiteboards. And so I involve my body with this kind of thinking. You feel a sense of your direction and purpose. You are not feeling the mental clutter or chatter. This is what we're aiming for today. We're going to resist the temptation to go down side trails and be fully engaged and present. This is way too long a list. So I want you to take like a couple seconds here and look at that list and tell me in the chat window which one element of productive thinking do you want to try to play with today? Drop that in the chat window. I'd love to see it. Don't try and do it all. Just pick one. And let's see what y'all say. While that happens, because there's a little delay on my end, we'll go over the Goal Friday rules of play really quick. We're going to create conditions to do your best thinking here today. Remember that our conversations in the chat, let's keep these are public chat comments and public video comments, so they're not confidential, but please do keep them not confidential information. Make sure that if you share in the chat window, you're sharing something that is okay to be shared publicly. We'll stay kind, which I know you all will. You are my people. And then we're going to focus here on the non-toxic elements of this. So if we get into this exercise and you get frustrated or you are not feeling the productive thinking elements that we just talked about, then call me in the chat window. I want to be able to provide you some support, because if you're stuck on something, that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to, with a great deal of self-compassion, unstick you. So the exercise that we're going to practice today is not the big overthink. We're going to practice the big think. And this is an exercise I use before we even start thinking about our goals, because we want to spend some time with the issue that we're stuck on. Here, we're not setting goals. We're thinking about, an issue or something that we might be overthinking, or whatever the areas that you might want to set goals about. And we're going to envision what you might like to see be different. So the outcome of this is you externalize what change is most important. We're also going to get to some answers about what is most important and why it matters. And those questions not only yield really important building blocks for goal setting, but they help us refocus our overthinking brains. So when we're thinking about what's actually most important with that intuitive part of our brain, with that flow and creative part of our brain, then we help keep ourselves out of that overthinking mode. And when we get to goal setting, we want to do our insightful, intuitive thinking before we're worrying about mechanics of goal setting. So here's what we're going to do. This is going to be a very quick exercise. We're only going to spend 5 minutes, 3 minutes per question. And we do that on purpose because when we are not in an overthinking mode, we might want to take 15 minutes on this first question. But if we're in an overthinking mode, then if we give ourselves more than 3 or 5 minutes, we risk that we're going to make that jump from our intuitive and insightful thinking to our studious and deliberative and conscious thinking. And that's not where we want to be. We want to stay in our intuition. So grab your paper, whatever tool it is that you're going to use today. And what I want you to do is think about an issue that you're overthinking or a goal that you're trying to set, something that you're really overthinking. I want you to imagine yourself 90 days in the future, or at whatever point that this is no longer an issue for you. Physically put yourself in that future. Visualize it. Look around at where you are. Right now, I'm in my office 90 days from now. It means that's going to be, right now it's end of September, so that's going to be the dead of winter. There might even be snow on the ground outside my window. And I'm going to put myself in that future place. I want you to ask yourself, what's different? What's changed? What's improved? And what are you really proud of? So, whatever that topic is you're overthinking, let's see when we're way past the overthinking, we've done the doing, and it's achieved, and ask ourselves these questions. And I'm going to set us a 5-minute timer. We're going to do 5 minutes on this, and then we'll come back together and debrief, and we'll get into our next question. If you have any questions or you get stuck, comment in the comment window. I'll be on my phone. If I'm looking away, it's just because I'm doing comments on my phone to help people out. So let's do a 5-minute on this one, and I'll see you back here in 5 minutes. So I don't know about you, that was about a minute too long for my intuitive brain. My conscious brain started to speak up, so I just stopped what I was doing and waited for the timer to run. I would love to hear from you in the comments as we get ready for the second part of this exercise. Did anything surprise you there? Did anything come up for you that might have been different than if you were in a typical overthinking mode? Yeah, Teresa said about 3:30 I hit the wall. That was about where I did too. I was like, shoot, I should have made this a 3-minute exercise. Some people might need a little more time though, just to get into the exercise. So awesome. So I did mine on overthinking my book launch. And an example of some of the things that I wrote down were I'm getting a few good opportunities from it a month, which again, there's a really big difference between thinking that what I'm trying to do is make myself famous and make a bestseller versus what's really different. What's important to me about being different is I'm getting a few good opportunities a month. That's totally achievable. I can calm down. I'm hearing from folks that my book is helpful to them. I'm I will know how to publish and launch a book, so it's never gonna be this scary again, and I'm working on my next book, writing in public, with way less fear than this process has been for me this first time around. So, that's the kind of thinking that we wanna get out of our brains. The thinking I did, and this might not be the case for you, but the thinking I did just calmed my anxiety by a ton because I was able to see the future, see it isn't that far off, and then now I can figure out how to get there. So the second part that we're gonna do of this exercise, and we're just gonna take 3 minutes on this one, is look at what you just wrote down, and you can slot it into 2 spots. For this issue right now or for this goal period, what is most important to achieve? And just try and pick the one most important thing that's most important to achieve. So, I'll look at mine and make a decision. And then once you've chosen one of those things, ask yourself, why does that matter? So you're going to tell yourself what's most important and why it matters. And we're just going to take 3 minutes on this. Then we'll come back for a 2-minute debrief and then I'll cut you loose. I will stick around for some questions after that. So we'll just do 3 minutes on this one. Take a look at your notes. See if you can put together a statement. What is most important to achieve on this issue that you're overthinking? And why does it matter? I'll see you back here in 3 minutes. We might even cut this one a minute short if folks are already getting to their whats and whys. Oh, it's so cool. We've got folks on LinkedIn and folks on YouTube, and you can't see each other's comments. But for folks on LinkedIn, on YouTube, we've got comments from Jamar of, in that future, Jamar has more freedom and has created a flowy structure that he loves and has a community where everyone pours into each other. You're already a good bit of progress on that second prong there, Jamar. But even when we have that kind of clarity about what we want our future to look like, it can reduce our overthinking. It can help you prioritize what's going to support that vision that you just enunciated. And then I want to give Teresa a huge high fives. She shared, she got done with hers pretty quick, and then she's going to live with it being good enough, which is hard for a lot of us who are wired this way, but good enough is exactly what we're aiming for. So I'll share mine. And then if you want to share any of your insights or anything that came to you about what's important and why it matters, drop that in the comments. The what's most important I chose to zero in on was that I'm hearing from folks that my book is helpful for them. And why that matters, it took me a while to come up with a why, but it matters because they're the audience I care about. I care about the people who are going to be helped by my book. And I spend all my time worrying about people who aren't going to like my book. And that doesn't do me any good. It doesn't help me support the people it's really for. So, my takeaway on today's Big Think is I'm going to focus more on the people that my book is for and worry less about the people who it's not for. Um, and so, what this does, this combination of a what and a why, gives us building blocks for a goal. So we can, I might revise my book goal to be, from what it is, to be an objective of I'm doing what I need to make sure that I'm focusing on the people my book is for, not the people it isn't for. And that right there helps me know what to focus on and what to prioritize. All right, team. Well, that is the end of the exercise for today. You can, of course, oh, sorry, there's a little blip in the screen making it hard to see. Feel free to use this exercise. You can use it when you're struggling with an issue you're overthinking to get some clarity with that intuitive part of your brain. You can use it when you need some kinesthetic thinking, like to grab a sheet of paper and some sticky notes and try and think an issue out quickly instead of overthinking it. You can also use it as a building block for goal setting, especially for creating those no BS objectives and key results I mentioned at the top. So if this has sparked your interest or you're curious to learn more about my work and working with me, the No BS OKRs workbook is available right now. You can get that at the link on the screen, findrc.co/OKRWB PDF. And that has this exercise in it and a bunch of other exercises that are similar to help you get your what's most important, why it matters, and what you actually aim to achieve in terms of empirically measurable outcomes out of you so that you can focus and work toward them, so we can shrink that thinking phase and have an appropriately sized doing phase and get into our learning and information and curiosity as soon as possible. I also have print books coming out this fall. You can find that information at findrc.co/books. The You Are a Strategist book also includes a version of this exercise, as well as other tools meant to help you connect with your own inner strategist. And then if you're really into it, then come join me in my membership community called Unblock Your Inner Strategist. We've got a payment plan option right now. We've also got that on sale because a lot of us are doing our quarterly review right now, getting ready for year end, gearing up for our 2025 strategic planning. And so I want to make sure that it's accessible to as many people as possible right now. So that's at findrc.co/UBYIS. All right, team. I am going to stick around for questions, so feel free to drop any questions in the chat window. And then come back next week. Next week, we're going to be doing the second piece of this, which is let's think about ways that we can get ourselves out of overdoing and out of overwhelm. We're going to use goals. Again, I know it's counterintuitive. We think of goals as this pressureful thing that's going to add stress to our lives. But we're going to practice using goals to actually reduce our stress levels, increase our focus, and reduce our overdoing so that we can focus on what we really need to do to achieve what's most important and not try and do everything. So I'd love to see you back here next week at 9 a.m. Pacific time on Friday. And then I'll stick around for a few minutes if anybody has any questions. Thanks so much for joining all.